I arrived at what I thought was Monday lunch at my daughter Amanda's house, excited to reconnect with family. Instead, Amanda looked me straight in the eyes in front of everyone and said coldly, "You're not family. Leave." The room froze. Fighting back tears, I replied with surprising calmness, "Remember this day. Today you didn't just lose your mother, you ruined your own future." I walked out with my head high while everyone watched in stunned silence. 8 days later, Amanda called me in tears, begging for help, finally facing the consequences of her cruel rejection. My name is Joy, and at 67 years old, I never imagined I would be essentially disowned by my own daughter. I raised 3 beautiful children, mostly by myself, after my husband Thomas died of a sudden heart attack 25 years ago. Amanda was just 12, Sarah was 14, and Daniel was 9 when their father passed. The loss devastated our family, but somehow we found the strength to keep going. After Thomas died, I had to quickly figure out how to provide for 3 grieving children on my own. I took a job as a school secretary during the day and did bookkeeping for local businesses at night. Our modest house in a middle-class neighborhood of Westfield became both our sanctuary and my workplace, as I would often stay up until 2 in the morning at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and receipts from the small businesses that trusted me with their accounts. The sacrifices were constant but necessary. I never took vacations. My wardrobe consisted of a few practical items, most second-hand, that I would mend again and again. I often skipped meals when money was tight, telling the kids I had already eaten when in truth I was saving the food for them. The children never went hungry, though sometimes dinner was creative combinations of whatever was in the pantry. I became an expert at making hearty soups that could stretch for days. Amanda was always the most challenging of my children. Even before Thomas died, she had a stubborn streak and a taste for things we couldn't afford. While Sarah was practical and Daniel was easygoing, Amanda dreamed bigger than our circumstances allowed. She would come home from friends' houses with stories about their swimming pools or fancy vacations, looking at me with questions in her eyes that broke my heart because I couldn't give her those things. Despite her difficult personality, Amanda and I shared a special bond through music. She showed exceptional talent on the piano, and I somehow found $30 a month for lessons with Mrs. Blackwell down the street. I can still picture Amanda practicing on our old upright piano, her small fingers moving across the keys with growing confidence. Those evenings listening to her play were some of my happiest memories as a mother. When Amanda was 19, she received a partial scholarship to a prestigious university. I took out a second mortgage on our house to cover the rest of her tuition. She majored in business administration and graduated with honors. I was so proud watching her walk across that stage in her cap and gown, the first in our family to earn a college degree. It was during her senior year that Amanda met Patrick Harrington, the son of a successful investment banker. They dated for 2 years before getting married in a ceremony far more lavish than anything our family had ever experienced. The Harringtons paid for most of it, though I emptied my modest savings to contribute what I could. At the wedding, I noticed how Amanda seemed to distance herself from me, introducing me quickly to Patrick's relatives before moving on to mingle with her new social circle. After the wedding, the distance between us grew. Amanda and Patrick bought a large house in an exclusive neighborhood 30 miles away. Their lifestyle reflected Patrick's family wealth rather than the modest upbringing I had provided. Amanda began canceling our regular lunch dates, always with a reasonable excuse: work commitments, social obligations, her children's activities. I tried to be understanding, but I couldn't help feeling that she was deliberately creating space between us. When I did visit their home, I noticed how Amanda would tense up if I mentioned anything about our past struggles or humble beginnings. Once, when I brought a homemade lasagna for dinner, she thanked me, but discreetly placed it in the refrigerator, serving instead a catered meal from an expensive local restaurant. The message was clear: my contributions weren't quite good enough for her new life. For 5 years, I had never met Patrick's parents. Amanda always had excuses for why I couldn't be included in gatherings where they were present. Then last week, I received a surprising text from Amanda inviting me to lunch on Sunday. In my excitement and confusion about this sudden inclusion, I misread it as Monday. The invitation mentioned that Patrick's parents would finally be there, and I was eager to meet them after all this time. The night before the lunch, I was looking through old photos when I received another text from Amanda. She had accidentally sent it to me, instead of to Patrick. It read, "Mom's coming tomorrow only because your parents insisted on meeting her. I'm so stressed about this. Please help make sure it goes smoothly and doesn't last too long." I sat there staring at my phone, the truth finally clear. Amanda hadn't invited me because she wanted me there. She had invited me because her in-laws had insisted on meeting her mother after 5 years of marriage. The realization stung deeply, but I decided to go anyway, hoping that perhaps this meeting might somehow bridge the growing gap between us. Sunday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine after a week of rain. I took it as a good sign, foolishly believing that perhaps today would mark a new beginning in my relationship with Amanda. I woke up early to bake her favorite lemon cake from scratch, the same recipe she had requested for every birthday since she was 10 years old. I also gathered a small photo album I had put together, filled with happy memories of Amanda growing up that I thought Patrick's parents might enjoy seeing. I spent extra time on my appearance, wanting to make a good impression. I wore my best navy blue dress with pearl earrings that Thomas had given me on our 20th anniversary, just months before he passed. I even splurged on having my hair done the day before, something I rarely indulged in. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman trying her best to fit into a world her daughter now inhabited. The drive to Amanda's house felt longer than usual. Their home was in Lakewood Heights, an upscale community with manicured lawns and imposing houses set back from the street. Amanda and Patrick's house was one of the largest on their block, a 3-story colonial with white columns and perfectly trimmed hedges. I parked my 15-year-old sedan behind a sleek black Mercedes I assumed belonged to Patrick's parents. Amanda opened the door before I could ring the bell. Her smile seemed tight, and her eyes darted behind me as if checking whether any neighbors had seen my arrival. "Mom, you're here," she said, giving me a quick, stiff hug. "We're all in the living room. Just remember, this is important, okay?" I nodded, clutching my cake container and the photo album. "I brought your favorite lemon cake." A flash of annoyance crossed her face. "You didn't need to bring anything. We have dessert planned." The living room was impeccably decorated, in neutral tones, with expensive-looking furniture that seemed more for show than comfort. Patrick stood as I entered, coming over to greet me with the practiced charm I remembered from their wedding. "Joy, so glad you could join us," he said, taking the cake from my hands and passing it to their housekeeper without a glance. Sitting on the sofa were an elegant couple in their 70s. The man stood immediately, extending his hand with genuine warmth. "Mrs. Turner, what a pleasure to finally meet you. I'm William Harrington, and this is my wife, Eleanor. We've been looking forward to this for quite some time." Eleanor Harrington rose and surprised me with a gentle hug. "Joy, I've heard so many wonderful things about you from Patrick. I'm so glad we're finally meeting." I noticed Amanda's eyebrows rise slightly at this comment, and she quickly interjected, "Let's move to the dining room, shall we? Lunch is ready to be served." The dining room featured a massive table that could easily seat 16 people, though today it was set for just the 5 of us. Crystal glasses and fine china gleamed under a chandelier that probably cost more than my car. I was seated between William and Eleanor, with Amanda and Patrick across from us. As the first course was served, a butternut squash soup that was delicious but served in portions too small to satisfy anyone with a real appetite, William began asking me questions about my life and family. "Amanda tells us you worked in a school system?" he asked kindly. "Yes, I was a secretary at Westfield High for 22 years, I replied. "I retired just last year." "And you raised 3 children on your own after your husband passed?" Eleanor added. "That must have been incredibly difficult." "We managed," I said, smiling at Amanda. "We had some tough times, but we had each other." Amanda was actually quite resourceful as a teenager. She used to help me clip coupons every Sunday, and she became an expert at finding sales. Amanda's face tightened. "Mom, nobody wants to hear about coupons." She turned to Eleanor. "Did Patrick tell you about our plans to renovate the kitchen? We're working with the same designer who did the Caldwell's house on Lakeshore Drive." Eleanor nodded politely, but then turned back to me. "I'd love to hear more about Amanda as a child. Patrick says she was quite the piano player." My heart warmed at the genuine interest. I reached for the photo album I had placed beside my chair. I actually brought some photos. This one is Amanda at her first recital when she was 13. Amanda's face flushed as I opened the album to show a young girl in a simple dress sitting at a piano. "Mom, nobody wants to see old photos right now." "I'd love to see them," William said firmly, reaching for the album. "What a beautiful young lady you were, Amanda, just as you are now." As William and Eleanor paged through the photos, I shared stories about Amanda's childhood, her determination to master difficult piano pieces, her leadership in the school debate team, the summer she spent volunteering at the local library. With each story, Amanda seemed to grow more agitated, while her in-laws appeared increasingly charmed. "You must be so proud of her," Eleanor said warmly. "It's clear how much love and care you put into raising your children." "I am very proud," I agreed. "All my children have grown into wonderful adults. Amanda always had such ambition. I remember when she was 16, she started a small business tutoring younger children in math. She saved every penny toward college." "I didn't know that," Patrick said, looking at his wife with surprise. Amanda laughed nervously. "It was nothing, really. Mom tends to exaggerate my little childhood projects." "It wasn't little at all," I countered gently. "You earned over $2,000 that year. It helped pay for your first semester books." The main course arrived expertly prepared salmon with roasted vegetables and a quinoa side dish I had never tasted before. As we ate, the conversation shifted to Patrick's work and their children's private school activities. I listened attentively, noting how Amanda seemed to relax when the focus moved away from her past. William refilled my wine glass, a rich red that probably cost more than I usually spent on a week's groceries. As I reached to thank him, my elbow caught the edge of my plate, causing me to accidentally bump my wine glass. The red liquid splashed across the pristine white tablecloth, creating a spreading stain that looked horrifyingly like blood against the perfect white linen. "I'm so sorry," I gasped, reaching for my napkin to dab at the spill. The moment seemed to trigger something in Amanda. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "This is exactly why I didn't want to do this," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "I knew something like this would happen." "Amanda," Patrick said in a low, warning tone, "it's just a spill. It happens." "No, it's not just a spill," Amanda continued, her composure completely gone. It's everything. Do you know how hard I've worked to build this life? To fit in with your family and your friends? I've spent years distancing myself from my background, and then she comes in with her discount store dress and stories about coupons and second-hand clothes. The room fell completely silent. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth in shock, while William's expression hardened. Patrick stared at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. Amanda turned to me, her eyes cold. "The only reason you're here is because William and Eleanor kept asking to meet you. I didn't want you here. I've worked too hard to be associated with someone so common." The words hit me like physical blows. I sat perfectly still, my hands trembling slightly in my lap. "You're not family anymore," Amanda continued, her voice now eerily calm. "I need you to leave." The dining room remained frozen in shocked silence. William started to say something, but I gently raised my hand to stop him. I stood slowly, smoothed my discount store dress, and looked directly into Amanda's eyes. "Remember this day, Amanda," I said, my voice steady despite the pain crushing my chest. "Today you didn't just lose your mother, you ruined your own future." I gathered my purse and the photo album, nodded respectfully to the Harringtons, and walked out of the dining room with as much dignity as I could muster. Patrick followed me to the front door, apologizing profusely, but his words barely registered. I simply smiled sadly, touched his arm once, and left. The drive home passed in a blur. Somehow, I managed to navigate the 30 miles back to my modest ranch house without causing an accident, despite the tears that occasionally blurred my vision. I parked in my driveway and sat motionless for several minutes, replaying Amanda's words in my mind. "You're not family anymore." Inside my empty house, the silence felt deafening. I placed the photo album on my coffee table and sank onto my worn but comfortable sofa. The grandfather clock Thomas and I had bought for our 10th anniversary ticked loudly in the corner, marking the passage of time in a life that suddenly felt empty. I didn't cry immediately. Instead, I felt a strange numbness, as if my body was protecting me from the full impact of what had just happened. I mechanically changed out of my navy dress, hanging it carefully in my closet, and put on comfortable clothes. Then I made a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen table, staring out the window at my small but well-tended garden. The phone rang around 7 that evening. It was Sarah, my middle child, her voice tight with concern. "Mom, Daniel just called me. Patrick reached out to him about what happened today. Are you okay?" Only then did the tears finally come, streaming down my face as I told Sarah about the lunch and Amanda's cruel rejection. "I'm coming over," Sarah said immediately. "I'll be there in an hour." "No, sweetheart," I replied, wiping my eyes. "I appreciate it, but I need some time alone to process this. I'll be fine, I promise." Sarah reluctantly agreed, but only after making me promise to call if I needed anything. Daniel called shortly after, his normally easygoing demeanor replaced by protective anger. "What Amanda did is unforgivable, Mom," he said firmly. "Sarah and I are both here for you, always." Their support warmed my heart, but couldn't heal the wound Amanda had inflicted. After reassuring both of them that I would be okay, I took a sleeping pill and fell into a restless sleep. The next 3 days passed in a fog of grief. I didn't leave the house. I barely ate. Friends called, but I let their messages go to voicemail. Sarah checked in twice daily, and Daniel sent thoughtful text messages, but I responded with brief assurances that I just needed time. The truth was, I couldn't bear to talk about what had happened without breaking down. On the 4th day, my neighbor Lucille knocked on my door around noon. Lucille was a widow like me, though 10 years older, with a no-nonsense attitude and a kind heart beneath her blunt exterior. When I didn't answer, she used the spare key I had given her years ago and let herself in. "You look terrible," she announced, finding me still in my bathrobe at the kitchen table. "Thank you for noticing," I replied dryly. Lucille put a casserole dish in my refrigerator and set about making fresh coffee. Sarah called me, told me what happened with Amanda. I sighed, too exhausted to feel embarrassed. "Did she tell you my own daughter essentially disowned me at Sunday lunch?" "She did," Lucille nodded, placing a mug of strong coffee in front of me. "And now I'm going to tell you something. The same thing happened to me 20 years ago with my Judy." I looked up in surprise. Lucille and her daughter Judy seemed close whenever I saw them together. "What? How?" "Different circumstances. Same result," Lucille said, settling into the chair across from me. "Judy married a man who thought I was too outspoken, too working class. For 3 years, she chose him over me, cut me out of her life completely. It nearly killed me." "What happened?" I asked, wrapping my hands around the warm coffee mug. "His true colors showed eventually, as they always do," Lucille replied. "He left her for another woman. Judy came back, apologizing, needing support, and I had a choice to make." "You forgave her," I said. Eventually, Lucille nodded. "But not right away, and not without conditions. The experience changed me, Joy. Made me realize I'd spent my whole life being whatever everyone needed me to be, especially my children. It was time to be who I needed me to be." Her words struck a chord. Hadn't I done exactly that? Shaped myself entirely around my children's needs since Thomas died? Perhaps even before? "The thing is," Lucille continued, "I realized I'd helped create the situation by always being the one to bend, to accommodate, to sacrifice. I taught Judy that my feelings were less important than hers. I thought about all the times I had made excuses for Amanda's inconsiderate behavior, all the lunches she had canceled at the last minute, all the times she had subtly belittled my life and choices. I think I've done the same with Amanda," I admitted quietly. "Probably," Lucille agreed bluntly. "And now you have a chance to change that pattern if you want to. But first, you need to shower and eat something. You smell like grief and old coffee." Despite everything, I laughed. Lucille had a way of cutting through the fog with her directness. After she left, I showered and made myself a proper meal. Then I sat down with a legal pad and began to make notes about my relationship with Amanda, looking for patterns I had missed or enabled. The next day, I called Sarah and Daniel and asked them to come over for dinner on Saturday. I needed to talk to them face to face about some decisions I was making. They both readily agreed, sounding relieved that I was reaching out. Before they arrived, I received a disturbing call from my sister Patricia, who lives in Arizona. She asked cautiously if I was feeling better after my episode. "What episode?" I asked, confused. "Well, Amanda called me earlier this week. She said you showed up at her house unexpectedly on Sunday, acting confused and making a scene at their lunch. She said you've been having memory issues and might be in the early stages of dementia." I was speechless for a moment, shock quickly giving way to anger. "Patricia, that is absolutely untrue. I was invited to that lunch. Amanda publicly humiliated me and told me I wasn't family anymore because she was embarrassed by my common background." There was a pause before Patricia replied. I had a feeling something wasn't right about her story. It didn't sound like you at all. After talking with Patricia, I made several more calls and discovered that Amanda had been spreading the same lies to other family members and mutual friends, portraying herself as the concerned daughter dealing with a mentally declining mother who had invented a confrontation. The discovery should have devastated me. Instead, It crystallized something in my mind. The daughter I had raised, sacrificed for, and loved unconditionally had become someone I no longer recognized, someone willing to destroy my reputation to protect her own image. It was time, as Lucille had suggested, to start being who I needed me to be. Sarah and Daniel arrived together on Saturday evening. Sarah, practical and efficient, like her father had been, brought a grocery bag full of ingredients and immediately started helping me prepare dinner. Daniel, with his gentle spirit, set the table and kept the conversation light as we worked. Both carefully avoided mentioning Amanda, creating a protective bubble around me that was touching but unnecessary. Once we were seated with our meal, I decided to address the elephant in the room directly. "I know you're both worried about me after what happened with Amanda," I began, "but I'm actually doing much better now. I've had time to think, and I've made some decisions I want to share with you." Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. "Whatever you need, Mom, we're here for you. First, I want you both to know that I've discovered Amanda has been telling people I have dementia and invented the confrontation at her house." Daniel's face darkened with anger. "That's absolutely I held up my hand. "I know, it's not true, and it's hurtful. But I'm not going to engage in a public battle with her about it. People who know me will see the truth eventually." "But Mom," Sarah protested, "you can't let her spread lies about you." "I'm not letting her do anything," I replied calmly. "I'm choosing how I respond, and my choice is to focus on moving forward with my life rather than getting dragged into a drama that will only cause more pain." I took a sip of water, gathering my thoughts before continuing. "What I do need to tell you both is that I've been financially supporting Amanda in ways neither of you knew about." Their surprised expressions confirmed they had no idea. I explained how I had been paying half of the private school tuition for Amanda's children for the past 3 years, money Amanda and Patrick had told everyone came from their own successful investments. "I've already contacted the school to let them know I won't be continuing those payments," I said. "And that's not the only change I'm making." I told them about my decision to sell the family home. For years, I had resisted the idea despite financial advisors suggesting it made sense for a widow living alone. I had convinced myself I needed to keep it for the children, even though neither Sarah nor Daniel had lived there for over a decade. "I've already spoken with a realtor," I said. "The market is strong right now, and this neighborhood has become quite desirable for young families. The money from the sale will allow me to buy a smaller place outright, perhaps that condo development near the beach I've always admired, and still have enough to do some traveling." "The beach condo," Sarah repeated, her eyes widening. "You've talked about those for years. That would be wonderful for you, Mom. But what about all the memories in this house?" Daniel asked gently. "Dad's workshop in the basement, the marks on the wall, where we measured our heights growing up." "The memories don't live in the walls, sweetheart," I said softly. "They live in us. And I think your father would be the first to tell me it's time to create some new memories while I still can." We talked for hours that evening about practical matters like what furniture I would keep and what I would sell or give away, but also about deeper things. How Amanda's rejection had forced me to reevaluate my identity beyond being their mother. How I wanted to use whatever years I had left to find new purpose. "I'm thinking of volunteering at the women's shelter downtown," I told them. "They need help with their financial systems, and that's something I know how to do." By the time Sarah and Daniel left that night, there was a new energy between us. I was no longer just their mother who needed protection, but a woman making bold choices for her own future. The shift was subtle but profound, and I could see a new respect in their eyes that warmed my heart. What I didn't tell them was what I had learned about Amanda and Patrick's finances through William Harrington. The day after the disastrous lunch, William had called me, apologizing profusely for what had happened. "I want you to know that Eleanor and I were appalled by Amanda's behavior," he said. "Nothing about that interaction aligned with the values we tried to instill in our son." During our conversation, William revealed something that shocked me. Contrary to what I had believed, Amanda and Patrick were not financially independent. The Harringtons had been paying their mortgage and subsidizing their lavish lifestyle for years, with the understanding that Patrick would eventually join the family investment firm. The house, the cars, the private schools, all were primarily funded by William and Eleanor. "We believed in helping them establish themselves," William explained. "But after witnessing how Amanda treated you, we've decided to reevaluate our arrangement. We cannot, in good conscience, continue to support someone who shows such disrespect to her own mother." I had mixed feelings about this revelation. On one hand, it explained Amanda's intense status anxiety and her desperate need to impress the Harringtons. On the other hand, it meant that my daughter's rejection of me might soon have financial consequences I hadn't anticipated. Part of me wanted to intercede on her behalf, to protect her as I always had. But Lucille's words rang in my ears. Sometimes protection is the least helpful thing you can offer. In the days that followed my dinner with Sarah and Daniel, I moved forward with my plans. I listed the house with a realtor who predicted it would sell quickly. I began sorting through 30 years of accumulated possessions, deciding what to keep, what to give to my children, and what to donate. The process was both painful and liberating. I also made an appointment with my financial advisor to restructure my retirement plan based on the upcoming changes. I had always lived frugally, and between my pension, Social Security, and the proceeds from the house sale, I would be comfortable, not wealthy by any means, but secure enough to enjoy a modest beach condo and occasional travel. Through it all, I heard nothing from Amanda. According to Sarah, who remained in contact with Amanda's husband, Patrick and Amanda were having serious marital problems. Patrick had been deeply disturbed by Amanda's behavior at the lunch and had begun questioning other aspects of their relationship. But I tried not to dwell on this information. Amanda had made her choice, and I was making mine. The week that followed brought a surprising sense of peace. Each day I woke with purpose rather than grief. I worked methodically through the house, room by room, creating order from decades of family life. In the process, I rediscovered parts of myself. I had forgotten the young woman who had loved painting watercolors before marriage and children filled her days, the amateur photographer who had documented family trips with an artistic eye, the avid reader of historical fiction, who had once dreamed of visiting the places in her favorite novels. Sarah helped me set up an online profile for the beach condo development, and to my delight, a ground-floor unit with a small private patio had just become available. Using some of my savings as a down payment, I made an offer that was accepted the next day. For the first time in decades, I felt the thrill of starting a new chapter purely of my own choosing. I also kept my promise to myself about the women's shelter. I contacted the director, a formidable woman named Beverly, who had turned her own experience with domestic violence into a mission to help others. After hearing about my bookkeeping background, she immediately invited me to tour the facility. The shelter was housed in a former hotel that had been converted to provide temporary housing for women and children escaping dangerous situations. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, secure, and filled with a spirit of determined hope that resonated with me. After the tour, Beverly and I sat in her cluttered office discussing their financial needs. "We're always operating on a shoestring," she explained. "Donations come in sporadically. Grants have strict usage requirements, And meanwhile, we're trying to provide everything from diapers to job interview clothes for dozens of women. What if I helped create a more organized system? I suggested. Something that tracks every dollar coming in and going out, with projections for future needs? Beverly's eyes lit up. You'd do that for us? We've needed someone with those skills for years, but we can't afford to hire a professional. I don't need payment, I assured her. Just a meaningful way to use my experience. We agreed that I would come in 3 days a week, starting the following Monday. As I drove home from the shelter, I felt a sense of rightness that had been missing since the confrontation with Amanda. I was no longer defined solely by my role as mother. I was becoming a woman with purpose beyond family obligations. What I didn't know then was that while I was rebuilding my life, Amanda's was unraveling. I later learned that the day after William Harrington's call to me, he and Eleanor had met with Patrick and Amanda to discuss their financial arrangement. William made it clear that they would no longer be covering the mortgage payments or private school tuition. Additionally, the position Patrick had been promised in the family firm was now contingent on him demonstrating the values the Harringtons considered essential to their business reputation. Patrick, already shaken by Amanda's behavior at the lunch, reacted with a mixture of embarrassment and anger. According to Sarah, who heard the story from Daniel, who had spoken with Patrick directly, the confrontation with his parents led to the first serious fight in Patrick and Amanda's marriage. "How could you speak to your mother that way?" Patrick had demanded once they were alone. My parents were horrified, and frankly, so was I. Amanda had apparently tried to defend herself, claiming I had embarrassed her deliberately, that I had never approved of her marriage or lifestyle. Patrick wasn't convinced. "I saw what happened," he told her. "Your mother was nothing but kind and gracious, while you were cruel and dismissive. And now I find out you've been spreading lies about her mental health. Who are you, Amanda? Because you're not the woman I thought I married." The argument continued for days, with new revelations emerging about other lies Amanda had told over the years. Patrick discovered that many of their social connections believed he had earned his position through merit rather than family connections, a fiction Amanda had carefully cultivated. He learned that the story she had told about her own background had been sanitized to remove any hint of financial struggle or working-class roots. Most devastatingly, Patrick uncovered that Amanda had been systematically isolating him from friends she deemed not useful to their social climbing, including his childhood best friend, who had fallen on hard times after a divorce. With his parents' financial support withdrawn and his trust in his wife shattered, Patrick made a decision. He packed bags for himself and their 2 children, ages 6 and 4, and moved temporarily to his parents' guest house. He told Amanda he needed time to reevaluate their entire relationship and suggested she use the time to do some soul-searching of her own. I learned none of this directly. My phone remained silent, with no calls from Amanda. I focused instead on my own progress. The house sale was moving forward quickly, with 3 offers above asking price within days of listing. I selected a buyer, a young couple expecting their first child who fell in love with the garden I had tended for decades. The closing was set for 30 days out, coinciding perfectly with the availability of my beach condo. Each day brought small victories and occasional setbacks as I sorted through a lifetime of possessions. Sarah took the family photo albums to digitize before returning them to me, preserving memories while reducing physical clutter. Daniel claimed his father's workbench and tools, planning to set up a workshop in his own garage where his children could learn the skills their grandfather would have taught them. On the 7th day after the fateful lunch, as I was boxing books in my home office, the landline rang. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was another realtor hoping to list my house. Something made me pick up on the 4th ring. "Hello?" I said, balancing the phone between my ear and shoulder as I sealed a box with packing tape. There was silence on the line, then a sound that took me a moment to identify. Sobbing. "Hello?" I repeated. "Who is this?" "Mom," came Amanda's voice, choked with tears. "It's me. I need to talk to you. Everything is falling apart." I sat down slowly in my desk chair, my heart beating rapidly. "Amanda," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "What's going on?" "Can I come over?" she asked, her words punctuated by shaky breaths. "Please, I just need to see you." Part of me wanted to refuse, to protect myself from further hurt. But a larger part needed closure, one way or another. "Yes," I said finally. "I'll be home all afternoon." She arrived 45 minutes later, a far cry from the polished, confident woman who had dismissed me from her home just over a week ago. Her hair was pulled back carelessly, her face bare of makeup and blotchy from crying. She wore jeans and a plain sweater instead of her usual carefully coordinated outfit. I met her at the door, but didn't embrace her. Instead, I led her to the living room where cups of tea waited on the coffee table. All around us were signs of my impending move-stacked boxes, empty spaces on walls where family photos had hung, furniture draped in sheets. "You're moving?" she asked, looking around in confusion. "Yes," I replied simply. "The house sold 3 days ago." "But this is our family home," she protested weakly. "It was," I agreed. "Now it will be a home for a new family. Please, sit down and tell me why you're here." Amanda sank onto the sofa, clutching her teacup like a lifeline. "Everything's gone wrong," she began, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "Patrick's left me. He took the kids to his parents' guest house. William and Eleanor have cut us off financially. The bank is threatening foreclosure on the house. My friends aren't returning my calls since the rumors started circulating about why Patrick left." I listened without interrupting, noting that even in crisis, Amanda's concerns centered on material losses and social standing rather than the breakdown of her family relationships. "And now," she continued, her voice rising, "I just found out the children's school called to say tuition hasn't been paid for next semester. They said you've been paying half all along and now you've stopped. Why would you do that, Mom? Why would you cut me off when I'm already suffering?" The accusatory tone in her voice stirred something in me, not anger, but a profound sadness for the entitled woman my daughter had become. "Amanda," I said gently but firmly, "I think you need to take a step back and consider what you just said. You publicly humiliated me, told me I wasn't family anymore, and then spread lies about my mental health to cover your cruelty. Yet you're asking why I stopped financially supporting your children's education that you and Patrick claimed to be paying for yourselves." She flinched, as if I had slapped her. "I was upset that day," she said defensively. "You embarrassed me in front of Patrick's parents by talking about our financial struggles and spilling wine on my tablecloth. Is that really what happened?" I asked quietly. "Or did you invite me only because the Harringtons insisted on meeting me after 5 years of marriage to their son? Did you reject me because I reminded you of a past you're ashamed of?" Amanda looked down at her hands. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under," she murmured. "Patrick's family, their social circle, they all come from money, from established families. I had to fit in. By denying your own family? By rejecting your mother?" I shook my head slowly. "That wasn't fitting in, Amanda. That was erasing yourself and replacing it with a fiction." "Well, it doesn't matter now, does it?" she said bitterly. "Patrick thinks I'm a horrible person. His parents think I'm a gold digger. The house will be repossessed. My children will have to change schools. My whole life is destroyed. Your life isn't destroyed, I corrected her. It's changing, yes, but what happens next depends on the choices you make now. That's easy for you to say, she snapped. You're not the one losing everything. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this confrontation wasn't about winning an argument, but about truth. Amanda, I lost my husband when I was 42 years old, left alone with 3 children to raise and a mortgage to pay. I worked 2 jobs for years, went without so you and your siblings could have what you needed. Last week, I lost my daughter when she told me I wasn't family anymore. So please don't tell me I don't understand loss. The room fell silent, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock. Amanda's shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw something beyond self-pity in her expression, the beginning of genuine shame. I need help, Mom, she whispered. I don't know what to do. What do you want from me exactly? I asked, my voice gentle but direct. Money to save your house? A place to stay? Or something else? Amanda opened her mouth, then closed it again. I could almost see her internal struggle as she considered what to say next. Finally, she looked up with fresh tears in her eyes. I don't know, she admitted. I thought you could fix this somehow. You always fixed everything when we were growing up. I can't fix this for you, I said. And even if I could, I wouldn't. What happened at your house wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment, Amanda. It was the culmination of years of choices you've made. Choices to value status over authenticity, appearance over reality, things over relationships. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, looking suddenly young and vulnerable. So, you won't help me at all? I didn't say that, I replied. I said I won't fix it for you. There's a difference. I set my teacup down and leaned forward. Before we talk about what happens next, I need you to be completely honest with me about something. Amanda nodded uncertainly. Why did you really come here today? Is it because you've had a genuine change of heart about how you treated me? Or is it because your comfortable life is falling apart and you think I might be able to help restore it? She flinched at the directness of my question, then looked away. Several moments passed before she spoke again. I came because I need help, she finally admitted in a small voice. But sitting here now, seeing all these boxes, realizing you're actually moving away from the only home I've ever known you in, her voice broke. I think I'm starting to understand what I've done, not just to you but to myself. She looked up at me, her eyes red but clearer than before. There's something else you should know, something I haven't told Patrick yet. She placed a hand protectively over her stomach. I'm pregnant, about 10 weeks along. With everything happening, I haven't found the right moment to tell him. The news hit me with unexpected force. Another grandchild one, I might never know if things continued as they were. Oh, Amanda, I'm terrified, she whispered. The thought of raising 3 children alone, with no home, no money. She shook her head helplessly. I don't even recognize my life anymore. I moved to sit beside her on the sofa, not touching her yet, but closer. Sometimes we need to lose sight of the shore before we can find a new direction, I said quietly. I think that's where you are now. What do I do, Mom? She asked, sounding for the first time like my daughter again rather than a stranger. First, you need to be honest with Patrick about the pregnancy, with yourself, about the person you've become, with everyone you've lied to about your background and your finances. She nodded, looking terrified but resolved. Second, you need to decide what kind of life you actually want, not what impresses other people, but what brings you genuine fulfillment and allows you to look at yourself in the mirror each morning with respect. And third? She asked, wiping away fresh tears. Third, I said, finally reaching out to take her hand, You need to understand that rebuilding what you've broken will take time. Trust isn't restored overnight. Relationships heal slowly, including ours. Amanda squeezed my hand desperately. Will you at least let me stay here for a while? Until I figure things out? I hesitated, weighing my newfound independence against my daughter's genuine need. You can stay in the guest room temporarily, I said finally. But there are conditions. Anything, she said quickly. You treat me with respect at all times. You contribute to household chores. You seek professional help. I'll recommend a therapist who helped me after your father died. You make a plan for supporting yourself and your children that doesn't depend on Patrick or his family's money. And most importantly, you tell the truth to everyone you lied to about me. Amanda swallowed hard but nodded. I'll do all of that, I promise. Then we have a starting point, I said, neither promising forgiveness nor withholding the possibility of it, one day at a time. The next morning, I awoke to the unfamiliar sound of someone moving about in my kitchen. For a moment I was disoriented, then remembered. Amanda was staying in the guest room. I pulled on my robe and went downstairs, curious about what I would find. Amanda stood at the stove, awkwardly attempting to make pancakes. A small disaster of flour and eggshells surrounded her, but she was focused intently on pouring batter into the pan. Good morning, I said, startling her slightly. Mom! I wanted to surprise you with breakfast. She gestured at the mess. Though I'm remembering now why you never let me cook unsupervised as a teenager. The small joke, self-deprecating rather than defensive, caught me off guard. You were always better at the piano than the spatula, I agreed, moving to the coffee pot. We ate together at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had countless family meals over the decades. The pancakes were misshapen but edible, and Amanda's attempt to do something for me, rather than expecting service, touched me more than she knew. I have an appointment with Patrick today, she said as we cleared the dishes together. I'm going to tell him about the baby. That's a good first step, I nodded. Do you want me to watch the children while you talk? She looked surprised by the offer. Would you? They're staying with his parents right now, but I'm sure Patrick would bring them here if he knew they could spend time with you. Later that morning, Patrick arrived with 6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old James. The children were excited to see their grandmother, though confused by the boxes and changes in the house. I suggested taking them to the park while Amanda and Patrick talked, giving them privacy for what would inevitably be a difficult conversation. At the playground, Lily showed me how high she could swing while James conquered the climbing structure with determined focus. Watching them, I saw echoes of Amanda, at their ages Lily's perfectionism, James's quiet creativity. These innocent children were unaware of the adult complexities swirling around them, and I felt fiercely protective of their right to a childhood untainted by status anxiety or materialistic values. When we returned home 3 hours later, Amanda and Patrick were sitting on the porch steps, talking quietly. Their faces were serious but calm, without the hostility I had feared might erupt. The children ran to them excitedly, full of stories about our park adventures. As Patrick prepared to leave with the children, he pulled me aside. "Thank you, Joy," he said sincerely, "for everything. Amanda told me about the baby and about the changes she wants to make. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I'm willing to work through this together if she's genuinely committed to change." One day at a time, I repeated the advice I'd given Amanda, and remembered that true change is shown through consistent actions, not promises or words. He nodded thoughtfully before gathering the children into his car. I noticed he had brought several bags of Amanda's clothes and personal items, not everything from their house, but enough to acknowledge that her stay with me might not be brief. The weeks that followed brought gradual but significant changes. Amanda began seeing Dr. Levine, the therapist who had helped me navigate grief after Thomas died. Initially reluctant, she soon found the sessions valuable enough to attend twice weekly. She spoke little about what they discussed, but I noticed subtle shifts in her behavior, less defensiveness, more willingness to acknowledge when she was wrong, increased awareness of how her words affected others. True to my conditions, Amanda helped around the house without complaint, even as the moving process accelerated. She contacted everyone she had lied to about my mental health, calling family members and sending emails to friends to retract her false claims. These admissions of dishonesty were humbling for her, and some relationships were damaged beyond immediate repair, but the act of truth-telling itself seemed to lighten something in her spirit. 2 weeks after moving in with me, Amanda took her first practical step toward independence by applying for a position as an administrative assistant at the local community college. The job paid far less than she was accustomed to living on, but it offered stability and benefits, including tuition credits she could eventually use to rebuild her career on a more authentic foundation. "It's entry level," she acknowledged when she told me about accepting the position, "but it's a start. And, honestly, it feels good to earn something entirely on my own merit, without connections or Patrick's family name opening doors." My house sold as planned, and I completed the purchase of my beach condo. As moving day approached, Amanda helped pack the remaining items and coordinated with the movers, showing practical skills I hadn't seen in her since she was a teenager, helping with household management. One evening, as we sat on the nearly empty back porch watching the sunset, Amanda broached a subject we had carefully avoided. "What happens when you move to the beach next week?" she asked quietly. "My job starts in 3 weeks, but I haven't found an apartment I can afford yet." I had been considering this question myself. My new condo had 2 bedrooms, one for me and a small second bedroom I had planned as a combination guest room and art studio where I could return to the watercolor painting I loved. "The second bedroom at the condo is yours if you need it temporarily," I said. "But Amanda, I need you to understand something important. My moving to the beach isn't just a change of address. It's a new chapter of my life, one where I'm prioritizing my own needs and dreams after decades of putting others first." She nodded slowly. "I understand, and I appreciate the offer of temporary space while I get on my feet." She hesitated before adding, "Patrick and I have been talking more. He's seen the changes I'm trying to make. He's suggested family counseling, with the possibility of reconciliation if we can work through our issues." "How do you feel about that?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Hopeful, but realistic," she replied thoughtfully. "I love Patrick, and I want our family to stay together, especially with the new baby coming. But I also recognize now how much of our marriage was built on false pretenses, my pretending to be someone I'm not, his assumption that we shared the same values about money and status." "That's a remarkably insightful observation," I commented, impressed by her self-awareness. She smiled slightly. "Dr. Levine isn't letting me get away with surface-level thinking anymore." The day after this conversation, Amanda surprised me by suggesting we visit the women's shelter where I had begun volunteering. "I'd like to see this place that's become so important to you," she explained. Beverly welcomed us warmly, giving Amanda a tour while I continued organizing their chaotic financial records. Later, Beverly pulled me aside. "Your daughter asked if there might be volunteer opportunities here," she said. "She mentioned having experience with the piano and wondering if music might be beneficial for some of the children staying with us." The gesture touched me deeply. Amanda was reaching beyond her own problems to consider how she might contribute to others' well-being, something the old Amanda would never have considered. That weekend, a significant breakthrough occurred when Amanda arranged a meeting between Patrick and me at a neutral coffee shop. Patrick had requested the conversation, wanting to understand more about the family dynamics that had shaped Amanda. "I realize I never really knew the full story of Amanda's childhood," he admitted. "She always made it sound like she came from a comfortable, conventional background. I never understood the struggles or the sacrifices you made." I shared some of our family history without bitterness or blame, helping him see the context that had formed Amanda's desperate desire for security and status. Patrick listened attentively, occasionally asking insightful questions that revealed his genuine desire to understand rather than judge. "I still love her," he confessed, as our conversation drew to a close. "And the news about the baby, it changes things. I want to make our marriage work, but I need to know the real Amanda, not the persona she created." "She's finding herself, too," I told him. "The woman she's becoming now might be someone you'll love even more deeply because she's authentic." The following week, I moved into my beach condo, with Amanda temporarily occupying the second bedroom. The space was smaller than my family home, but filled with light and the sound of distant waves. For the first time in decades, I arranged furniture and decorated walls exactly as I pleased, without considering anyone else's preferences. Amanda found unexpected joy in the simplified lifestyle. She began taking early morning walks on the beach, returning with shells and interesting stones that she arranged on the small patio. She spoke often with Patrick, who brought the children for weekend visits. These family days were tentative at first, but gradually gained warmth and genuine connection. After 3 weeks of daily therapy, job preparation, and honest conversations with Patrick, Amanda found an affordable 2-bedroom apartment near her new workplace. Patrick had agreed to cover the deposit and first 2 months' rent, while she established herself financially, a support arrangement they both felt was fair given the circumstances. The day before Amanda planned to move into her apartment, she received news that altered their trajectory again. Patrick's therapy sessions had led him to reevaluate his own values and priorities. He proposed a fresh start not in their oversized house in the exclusive neighborhood, but in a modest home they could actually afford on their combined salaries without his parents' support. "He wants us to build something real together," Amanda told me, her eyes bright with cautious optimism, "a life based on what matters to us, not what impresses others." By the 3-month mark after the fateful Sunday lunch, significant healing had occurred. Amanda and Patrick had reconciled, moving into a comfortable but modest house midway between his office and her new workplace at the college. The children were enrolled in the local public school, which they discovered had an excellent music program that delighted Lily's budding piano talent. The Harringtons, impressed by the genuine changes in their son and daughter-in-law, had cautiously renewed relationships with boundaries that honored the young family's independence. They established college funds for their grandchildren, but otherwise allowed Patrick and Amanda to build their life on their own terms. Most meaningfully for me, Amanda had truly embraced the lessons of her fall from privilege. She continued volunteering at the women's shelter, eventually establishing a weekly music program where she taught simple piano lessons to children staying there. Watching her interact with those vulnerable kids, I saw genuine empathy that had been buried beneath years of status-seeking and materialistic values. Our own relationship healed gradually through consistent, respectful interaction and shared experiences rather than dramatic declarations. Amanda never missed a Sunday dinner at my beach condo, sometimes bringing her family, sometimes coming alone for quiet conversations on the patio as the sun set over the water. 6 months after that devastating Sunday lunch, Amanda organized a special family gathering at my condo. Sarah and Daniel came with their families, along with Patrick, the children, and even the Harringtons, who had become unexpected friends of mine through our shared love of gardening. Before dinner, Amanda asked for everyone's attention. Standing beside Patrick, her pregnancy now visible, she addressed me directly. "Mom, 6 months ago, I made the terrible mistake of rejecting you and the values you tried to instill in me. I chose status over sincerity, appearances over authenticity. That choice cost me nearly everything that truly matters." She took a deep breath before continuing, "But it also gave me the chance to rebuild my life on a foundation of truth. You could have turned your back on me when I came to you in desperation, but instead, you showed me a path forward with both love and accountability." She raised her glass of sparkling cider. "I want to publicly thank you not just for the sacrifices you made raising us after Dad died, but for the courage you showed in finally prioritizing your own happiness. You've taught me that true family isn't defined by obligation or blood, but by love that survives even when it's tested by fire." As applause filled my small living room, I looked around at the gathered faces my children, my grandchildren, even my former in-laws who had become valued friends, and felt the truth of Amanda's words. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what matters. In letting go of who I thought I needed to be for my children, I had found myself. In facing the consequences of her actions, Amanda had found her authentic voice. Together, we had discovered that broken relationships, like broken bones, can sometimes heal stronger at the point of fracture than they ever were before. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between preserving a relationship and preserving your self-respect? Sometimes the greatest act of love is setting boundaries that allow both people to grow. If this story touched you, please comment below with your own experience of family reconciliation or difficult boundaries. And if you found value in Joy's journey, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more stories of resilience and healing, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to rebuild what's broken. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that true family is built on love that can withstand even the hardest tests.